The maintenance bay of Falcon Ridge Air Station shimmered beneath the desert sun. Heat rippled through the open hangar doors, bending the light across rows of helicopters like ghosts of machinery waiting to breathe again. The air smelled of hot metal, jet fuel, and sweat, a scent that clung to every surface and every soul who worked there. Inside, Isla Rowan moved with quiet purpose. She wasn't young anymore, perhaps mid-40s, her hair streaked with gray and pulled back into a tight, regulation bun. Her boots were scuffed, her coveralls faded, her expression unreadable. In one hand she carried a battered clipboard, in the other, a toolbox older than half the crew. To anyone watching, she was just another contractor called in for a structural inspection. But assumptions are dangerous things, especially around people whose stories you don't know. She checked in at the duty desk, signed her name with steady, practiced strokes. The sergeant on duty, a tired man with grease under his nails, barely looked up as he verified her paperwork. "Blackhawk structural assessment?" he asked. "That's right," she replied. Her voice was calm, even, the kind of tone that didn't invite small talk. He nodded toward the open bay. "Birds waiting for you. Powers off, pre-flight done." She gave a short nod and headed deeper into the hangar. The rhythmic clatter of tools and the drone of a radio filled the air. No one paid her much attention, at least, not until Lance Corporal Trent Harper noticed her. Harper was 22 and fresh off technical school, still carrying the kind of arrogance that came before wisdom. His uniform was crisp, boots polished, ego polished even brighter. He'd had a bad week, failed a systems test, caught flack from his supervisor, and he was itching to remind someone that he still had authority over someone. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called out, not moving from where he stood. "You here for the avionics inspection?" Isla stopped mid-stride, raised her eyes from the clipboard. They were calm and sharp, like steel cooled in water. "Structural assessment," she said evenly. "You'll find the clearance in my folder." She handed him the file. Harper flipped through it with exaggerated importance, squinting at signatures as if decoding classified text. Behind him, 3 young airmen drifted closer, sensing the possibility of a show. "Looks like you've got clearance for structural, not avionics," Harper said finally, his tone smug. "Structural includes avionics mounting points," Isla replied. "Has since 2018. A low snicker came from behind him. "She knows the regs better than you do, Harper," one of the kids said. Harper's pride flared. He folded his arms. Regulations changed again. Electromagnetic protocols. "I'm gonna need you to confirm you're not carrying unauthorized electronics." The sergeant at the duty desk started to turn. "Harper, what the hell?" "I've got this, Sergeant," Harper cut in, not taking his eyes off Isla. The others were grinning now, feeding on his confidence. "Contraband devices can be hidden anywhere," Harper continued, his voice louder now. "Standard compliance requires a full check. You'll need to remove your upper gear." The hangar grew quieter, not silent, but the kind of hush that spreads when everyone senses a line being crossed. Isla didn't move. The only sound was the hum of cooling fans and the distant whine of a power tool. "Top half only," Harper said. "Standard procedure." Everyone knew that was a lie. She could have refused. Could have called the sergeant, demanded a superior, or walked away. But Isla had learned long ago that confrontation wasn't always about shouting, sometimes it was about silence. She placed her clipboard on a nearby workbench. Then, without a word, she began unzipping her coveralls. A whisper ran through the bay. The coarse fabric parted, revealing a plain gray t-shirt beneath, the kind worn by people who worked, not posed. She rolled the top of her coveralls to her waist, tied the sleeves, and stood still, her posture neither defiant nor ashamed. Harper smirked. "Turn around." Isla turned. The fluorescent lights caught the thin fabric of her shirt, tracing the lines of her back, and that was when the laughter died. Down her spine ran a tattoo, stark black against pale skin. A downward-pointing triangle. Below it, a string of alphanumeric code, V03147. At the base, the outline of a bird with spread wings, a hawk or eagle, inked with brutal precision. For a moment, no one spoke. The symbols meant nothing to most of them, just an old vet's memento, maybe. But to Sergeant Rodriguez, standing off to the side, the image chilled him. His grandfather had told stories, whispers of units that didn't officially exist, of soldiers who vanished from the records. Before he could speak, the hangar doors groaned open. Colonel Darius Fenn entered with two senior officers, their conversation dying mid-sentence as they took in the scene, the woman standing half-dressed, the nervous young men, the silent audience. The folder in Fenn's hand slipped and hit the concrete with a slap. His eyes locked on the tattoo, and the color drained from his face. "God help us," he muttered. Because that symbol wasn't art, it was the insignia of Task Force Viper, a black operations unit that officially never existed. And the woman standing in front of him wasn't just a contractor. She was one of the ghosts the military buried long ago. For a heartbeat, no one in Hangar 7 breathed. The heat, the noise, the whirring of tools, everything seemed to stop. Colonel Darius Fenn stood frozen, his eyes locked on the black markings carved into Isla Rowan's skin. The downward-pointing triangle. The coordinates. The hawk. Every shape, every line, hit him like a blow to the chest. The officers beside him exchanged puzzled glances, not understanding why their commander suddenly looked like he'd seen a ghost. But Fenn knew. He'd seen that insignia before, a decade ago, buried deep inside after-action reports that were supposed to be shredded. He remembered the whispers: Task Force Viper, Infiltration Unit, Kandahar Province, 2011. 3 soldiers declared Kia. 1 chopper down behind enemy lines. Mission buried. Names erased. And yet, here she stood. Breathing. Real. "Colonel," one of the officers murmured. "Sir, are you?" Fenn lifted a hand for silence. "Everyone, stand down." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a command carved in stone. Harper spun around, face blanching as he realized who was watching. Sir, I was conducting a standard." "Stand down." Fenn's tone turned cold, the kind that came from battlefields where words had weight and hesitation cost lives. The young corporal swallowed hard, lowering his hands. The others froze, unsure if they should salute, retreat, or vanish entirely. Fenn crossed the floor slowly, his boots echoing against the concrete. The silence stretched with every step. When he reached Isla, he stopped just short of her, not too close, but close enough to see the faint scars that traced her knuckles, the kind only earned from years of close-quarters fighting. "Ma'am," he said quietly. "You can get dressed." Isla didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't explain. She simply pulled her coveralls up with deliberate calm, every movement measured and steady. No shame. No anger. Just quiet control, the kind that made even seasoned officers uneasy. When she zipped up the front, the moment felt like the closing of a vault door. The secrets on her skin were locked away again. Then Fenn's gaze turned toward the others. "Corporal Harper," he said softly. "You will report to my office at 1400 hours. Bring your supervisor." Harper stiffened. "Sir, I was just following protocol." Fenn's voice was dangerously calm. "You don't even know what protocol is. You humiliated a classified operative in front of your peers. You'll learn the difference between authority and arrogance by the end of the day." Harper's throat bobbed. "Yes, sir." Fenn turned toward the one still holding his phone. "You delete the recording." "Sir, I delete it now." The young mechanic's fingers shook as he fumbled with his screen. Within seconds, the video was gone, erased like a sin no one dared to confess. Fenn waited until the last tremor of panic faded from the room, then addressed them all. Everyone out. Now. If I hear even a whisper about what happened here, you'll be scrubbing fuel tanks until you retire. The men scattered, boots clattering like hailstones on concrete. Only the colonel, his 2 officers, and Isla remained. For a long moment, Fenn studied her. Then, quietly, he said, Task Force Viper was decommissioned in 2012. Isla adjusted her sleeves, her eyes steady. Officially, she said. But not everything stays buried, Colonel. He exhaled slowly. There are no records of your service. That was the point, she replied. Some missions aren't meant to be remembered. Fenn looked at her, really looked. The stillness in her stance wasn't fear, it was discipline, refined through years of surviving situations where mistakes were fatal. Even now, surrounded by rank and authority, she radiated quiet control, a soldier without a uniform, but more dangerous than anyone in one. You're not supposed to exist, Fenn murmured. Neither are half the machines you're testing in Bay 3, she said. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. And yet here we are. That caught him off guard. Bay 3 was a restricted project, locked under triple clearance. Only 3 people on the base even knew what was under that tarp. For her to know meant her clearance ran far deeper than his. Fenn straightened. Understood, he said finally. Then, turning to his officers, clear the area. Nobody bothers her again. They obeyed instantly. When they were alone, he added in a low voice, You saved a lot of lives once, didn't you? Isla didn't answer. She just lifted her clipboard and said, If you'll excuse me, Colonel, I have an inspection to finish. He watched her walk back toward the helicopter, calm, precise, unstoppable. And Fenn realized that some legends didn't live in history books or briefing rooms. They walked quietly among the living, ghosts in coveralls, fixing the very machines that kept the world turning. After the others filed out, Hangar 7 felt heavier somehow, the air dense with embarrassment, awe, and the kind of silence that follows a storm. Colonel Fenn lingered near the office doorway, pretending to review a clipboard while secretly watching the woman who'd just turned his base upside down. Isla Rowan didn't waste a second on emotion. No fury, no bitterness, not even triumph. She simply set her tools back on the workbench, knelt beside the Blackhawk, and went back to work. Her movements were efficient, no wasted energy, no hesitation. Every flick of her wrist and twist of her wrench spoke of thousands of hours spent on machines that had to work now, not later. The hum of her portable scanner blended with the faint echo of footsteps retreating down the corridor. Fenn could see it now, she wasn't some washed-up contractor. She was the kind of technician soldiers prayed for when their lives depended on a rotor spinning in the middle of nowhere. After a few minutes, Master Sergeant Williams, the most senior mechanic on base, entered quietly. The man had been working on helicopters since Desert Storm, a legend among ground crews, and even he paused when he saw her. Without interrupting, he stood beside her and watched. Blade tracks off, Isla murmured without looking up. 2 millimeters high on the left rotor. Williams blinked. How'd you know that without running diagnostics? Feel the tips, she said, tracing the edge of one blade with her fingers. Distribution's uneven. You can sense the stress. He checked her claim with his gauge. She was right. Dead on. Williams crossed his arms. You do this kind of work overseas? Different aircraft, she said simply. Same principles. As she moved to the tail rotor, her hands glided across panels like a pianist playing a familiar song. Your number 2 hydraulic pump's running hot, she added. Housing expansion doesn't match the mount. He checked his tablet. That's correct. We've been monitoring that for weeks. How'd you? Vibration pattern, she said. Metal tells you when it's tired. The sergeant gave a low whistle. 30 years in maintenance, and I've never seen anyone work like that. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The work spoke for her. By then, other crew chiefs had begun drifting into the hangar, one by one, under the pretense of checking equipment, but really drawn by rumor. No one spoke above a whisper. They just watched her work, the way she adjusted torque by feel alone, the way she detected cracks invisible to the naked eye, the way she documented every issue in clean, unhurried handwriting. It was precision born not from training manuals, but from survival. Colonel Fenn finally broke the silence. "You've got an eye for details my inspectors miss," he said. Isla didn't look up. "Details keep people alive, Colonel. Miss one, and you start writing condolence letters." Her words carried the weight of experience, not as a threat, but as truth. 2 hours later, her report was done, 27 corrections, 3 potential failure points, and 6 recommendations that would prevent accidents the base didn't even know were coming. Williams signed off as witness, his signature carrying the weight of his entire career. When Isla packed up her tools, he stopped her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "that was the best inspection I've ever seen." She gave a short nod. "Then the aircraft will fly right. That's all that matters." Fenn watched her, a mix of respect and disbelief tightening in his chest. "Where did you really serve?" he asked. "Places that don't exist," she replied. "And what did you do there?" "Things that don't have manuals." For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Then he gave a slow nod. "Understood." As she slung her toolbox over her shoulder and started toward the hangar doors, every mechanic in the base stepped aside, not out of fear, but out of something else entirely. Respect. When she reached the threshold, the sunlight framed her in gold and shadow. Fenn called after her. "You don't have to come back here, you know. I can get you reassigned somewhere easier." Isla paused. The desert wind tugged at her hair. "I'll be back next month for the follow-up inspection." After everything that happened, why? She looked over her shoulder. Because they need to learn that quiet doesn't mean weak. And sometimes the ones you overlook are the ones keeping you alive. Then she stepped into the blinding heat, disappearing into the shimmer of the tarmac, a ghost returning to her silence. By the time the desert sun dipped behind the hangar roofs, the day's whispers had already become legend. What happened in Bay 7 traveled the base like radio static, muted voices in chow lines, half-finished sentences over maintenance logs. Everyone knew the outline, a contractor humiliated, a colonel's fury, and a tattoo that froze the room. No one knew the details. No one dared ask. At 1400 hours, Corporal Harper stood outside Colonel Fenn's office, his freshly pressed dress uniform doing little to hide the tremor in his hands. Beside him, Technical Sergeant Mills waited in grim silence. "Just tell the truth," Mills muttered. "Own it. Don't spin it." The aide opened the door. "Gentlemen." Inside, the air felt colder than the desert should ever allow. Fenn didn't shout. He didn't need to. He read the report once, then laid it flat on the desk. "You disgraced a professional under my command," he said quietly. "Someone whose clearance eclipses mine. You turned procedure into humiliation. That's not leadership, that's vanity." Harper tried to speak, but Fenn raised a hand. "Save it. You'll complete 6 weeks of extra duty, attend conduct retraining, and carry a reprimand in your record. But the punishment isn't what should worry you." He leaned forward. "What should worry you is why you did it. Find that answer before you wear another stripe." When they left, Harper's world felt smaller. The hangar, once his domain, now looked like a mirror showing him what arrogance really cost. That night, he sat alone in the enlisted club until Master Sergeant Williams pulled up a chair. "You know what you did today?" Williams asked. "I embarrassed myself," Harper muttered. No, the sergeant said. You embarrass the kind of person this whole base is built to serve. The quiet ones. The ones who never ask for respect because they already earned it in places we'll never see. Harper swallowed hard. I didn't know. That's the point, Williams said. You never know. So you treat everyone like they matter, until they prove they don't. Later, Rodriguez found him staring out at the floodlit flight line. My grandfather worked intelligence in Vietnam, Rodriguez said. He told me stories about people like her. Ghosts who saved lives no one counted. You saw one today. Harper didn't answer. He didn't need to. The weight in his chest said enough. 3 weeks later, when a new civilian inspector arrived for an avionics check, the tone in Hangar 7 had changed. The crew greeted her with courtesy, offered tools, asked questions instead of giving orders. No one joked. No one filmed. The lesson had stuck. Master Sergeant Williams folded it into his training sessions, not the story itself, but the principle behind it: respect first. Assume nothing. Colonel Fenn kept Isla Rowan's inspection report on his desk long after the paperwork should have been archived. It wasn't sentiment, it was a reminder. Excellence rarely announces itself. Sometimes it just signs the log, fixes the problem, and walks away. As for Isla, she never returned for applause. She came back a month later, exactly as she'd promised, quiet, punctual, professional. The same faded coveralls, the same battered toolbox. Only this time, every eye in Hangar 7 followed her with respect, not mockery. When she finished and stepped into the afternoon heat, the gate guard, a senior sergeant who'd seen too many secrets to count, noticed the faint edge of a triangle tattoo beneath her collar. He didn't ask. He simply nodded. Have a good day, ma'am. You too, Sergeant, she said, and disappeared into the shimmer of the tarmac. Weeks later, the legend of the ghost mechanic still drifted through Falcon Ridge, a reminder whispered to every new recruit. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never judge the quiet ones. Because sometimes, the deadliest soldiers are the ones who stopped needing to prove it.